Thank you everyone for joining us for Fuel Your Mind. My name is Belinda, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm part of the Health Promotion Unit here at UNSW. A huge thank you for spending your lunchtime with us. So Fuel Your Mind is part of Mental Health Month, and this is being run during National Nutrition Week. And we particularly want to bring your attention to how the food you eat impacts your well-being and the role of our campus environment can play in this. This webinar is part of a series of activities this week which discuss the role of your mental health and invites you to follow the healthy food trail through campus and explore a delicious range of affordable foods thanks to some new vendors on campus. During this webinar, we encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A function and comment in the chat function. I also want to draw your attention to the fact that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed at a later time as well. So before we commence, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which the UNSW campus reside. Today, I acknowledge the Gadigal people whose land I am hosting from today, as well as the Bidjigal and Ngunnawal peoples whose lands our other campuses reside. And I'd like to acknowledge and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this land is and always will be Aboriginal land. I'd love you to share in the chat which lands you're joining with us from today. So Mental Health Month at UNSW is all about raising awareness and encouraging students to seek help when they need it. Some events like this one also encourage staff to consider their mental health too and recognise the role that that plays in supporting students. This year's theme is taking steps on your wellbeing journey and encourages you to explore and find what tools or activities support you in maintaining your mental health. I know for me, this week, I'll be following that good food trail and eating some very nutritious foods along the way. So our mental health is part of what makes us who we are. And at times, we all need to seek help or find support along that journey. At UNSW, we offer mental health support for both students and staff, and this is available through Psychology and Wellness or the EAP service. And you'll see on the slide there's some QR codes if you want to scan those for any more information, and we'll add the links into the chat as well. So today we are being joined by three remarkable speakers, Jazzmin, Justin and Jason, the three Js. So each of these speakers are invited for their expertise and influence in their area of work. Jazzmin is a senior lecturer at the School of Health Sciences here at UNSW. She's an accredited practicing dietitian and nutritional epidemiologist, with research focusing on understanding the role of dietary factors in programming of health and disease across the lifespan. She is an esteemed researcher and chair of multiple research committees. She'll be opening this discussion with an overview of how the food we eat impacts our mental health and vice versa. Dr. Jason Wu is a professor and the head of nutrition science program at the George Institute for Global Health. His research and teaching focuses on reducing diet-related chronic diseases through implementing innovative food is medicine interventions, modelling the health and economic impact of food policies, and determining the role of dietary factors for disease prevention. When he's not advocating for a better planet, you will find him out hiking in those mountains. Following Jazzmin's talk, Jason will discuss the unconscious drivers of our food choices and the role that food environment plays on them. Lastly, we have Justin. He is the retail manager at UNSW. As part of the asset management team, Justin leads the development and implementation of the retail strategy to optimise the retail landscape across campuses. With a long history in the retail industry, he's been tasked with initiatives that focus on addressing key feedback provided by campus populations to increase and improve the availability of nutritious and affordable food options for staff and students. So I'd like to invite Jazzmin to take the screen now and share her presentation. And remember why Jazzmin is speaking. We invite you to ask any questions in the Q&A section, and you can comment in the comments section as well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you all see my slides? I'll make a start. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Belinda, for the introduction. So very delighted to be here today to talk about what we eat, how what we eat influence our mind and body. Before I start the science, I thought I would start with some global prevalence of mental disorders. As you would all aware how important our mental health is, and I'm sure that's why you are here today. So according to the recent WHO statistic, like from the World Mental Health Report in 2021, like more than 1 billion people worldwide live with a mental disorder. So that's 1 in every 7 people globally. And we also seen a slightly higher prevalence of mental disorders in women than men. And when we look at prevalence by disorder, we can see anxiety and depression, they stand out as the most commonly mental disorders. And then when we look at the prevalence by age, we can see the changes in prevalence rates in the past 10 years from 2011 to 2021. The largest increase that we have seen is in young people aged 20 to 29 years. This is not unexpected given young adulthood is a time of major life transitions like study, work, relationship, and financial pressures, all of which impact on our mental health. So now, and let's move on to look at the impact on mental disorders. I'm sure you all know, like the impact is far-reaching. Like people with severe mental health conditions have shorter life expectancies than the general population. And depression and anxiety, they have led to like 12 billion productive work days lost, and that's equivalent to a cost of $1 trillion US. And globally, mental disorders also count for more than 1 in every 6 years live with disability. And when we look at young people in particular, we can still see that depression and anxiety, they are the top 10 leading causes of global ES live with disability. So what about in Australia? So in Australia, we found 2 in every 5 experience a mental disorder in lifetime, and 1 in every 5 experience a mental disorder in the past 12 months. And then young people, they are particularly vulnerable, like that's 39% in those aged 16 to 24 years. And then the total direct and indirect cost associated with mental disorders, they are 284 billion Australian dollars. So now we have a good understanding of the prevalence and the impact. Let's move on to the role of nutrition in mental health. Like we always thought about, we have a good knowledge, we have good understanding that nutrition play a key role in our physical health, such as our body weight development, cardiovascular health, and etc. But now emerging research also points out quite a strong link between nutrition and our mental health. Like for example, like nutrients, they are essential for the brain structure and function, as well as neurotransmitter regulation, such as serotonin, dopamine. And it has also been found that what we eat also influence our gut and brain via the gut and brain axis. So for example, when we eat something nice with good nutrients, it not only goes into our gut, it will also feed into our brain health. And likewise, when our gut is not feeling the best, it passes the signals to our brain as well. And then there's also evidence to support diet high in antioxidants. They will protect against neuroinflammation. And then when we have a healthy diet, we have long-lasting energy and better focus and better mood. So the evidence is we found a dietary pattern with whole foods like whole grains, fruit and vegetables, lean meats and fish, legumes, nuts. They are protects against mental disorders, whereas the dietary pattern with processed food, they increase the risk of mental disorders. And so now we have known that there's a clear link between what we eat and our brain and mental health. But have you ever noticed when we feel stressed, we always reach out to foods? Raise your hand if you do. Like I'm probably would be the first one raising my hand there. So you might wonder, so why do we crave comfort food when we feel low and then feel worse after? So that comes to our stress food craving reciprocal cycle. Like when stress hits, there's increase in our cortisol level, so that increase our appetite, particularly for foods high in sugar, fat, and salt. And at the same time, our self-control decreases as well. So our food craving also, after we consume those food, it will give us a temporary relief. So we have a very short serotonin, dopamine boost. So via the gut and brain axis pathways. However, because those energy dense and nutrient poor foods, they do not give us the sustained energy and nutrients required. So we feel we have a quick drop in blood sugar levels and we feel fatigue and irritable. And that's how we crash and feel guilty afterwards. And then we back to stress. So we back to the vicious cycle again. So now moving on to some of the food and nutrients that we have found to support a happy mind and body. Like I need to first to mention omega-3 fatty acids. So they're anti-inflammatory. They're also essential for neurotransmitter function as well. So rich sources include oily and fatty fish like salmon, sardine. The plant sources are flax seeds, chia seeds, and other nuts. We also have the whole grains and leafy greens. They contain rich B vitamins and also fiber. Again, important for serotonin, dopamine production, also essential for our gut health as well. And then we also have protein, which provides building blocks for our neurotransmitters like fish, lean meats, cheese, eggs, and also legumes, beans and legumes. We also have the fermented foods, which like yogurt, kimchi, they provide probiotics for our gut health, which will feed into our brain health as well. So now let's look into what we can do, like what is how to put all the foods together onto a plate. So what we want to follow for our main meals, we want to have half plate of leafy greens or vegetables, ideally different colors, and then a quarter of our plate of lean meat and fish and eggs, which contains omega-3 fatty acids and good protein, zinc, and iron, and also a quarter of whole grains and beans, which give us rich B vitamins and fiber. And we also want to drink enough water throughout the day to ensure hydration, and then incorporate yogurt, fruits and nuts as snacks. And then we want to minimize the consumption of fast foods, also sugary drinks and foods, as well as alcohol. In terms of type of fat, we want to choose polyunsaturated fats like olive oil, canola oil, or rice bran oil as an example, instead of saturated fat like butter. So some practical tips to almost end. So choose whole foods instead of processed food and eat more plant-based food. Ideally, eat the rainbow. More color equals more nutrients. And trying to plan and pack healthy snacks and meals, so that will help us avoid stress eating. Also stay hydrated. That will lower our fatigue. Also ensure good sleep hygiene and stay active. That will help us lower our stress. And once our stress is managed, that will make our healthy eating easier. And also importantly, try to make small changes over time, so that will have a bigger impact in the long term. So in the end, we want to land ourselves on the positive food mood cycle. So where we use good sleep, physically exercise to manage our stress, and the balance that will help us to choose nutritious food. Then will lead to better brain function, stable mood and energy, and then better food choices. So that's all from me, and please leave your questions in the chat. We have a Q&A question, and I'll hand over to Jason, who will talk about how food environment shape our food choices. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Jazzmin. That was super interesting. Over to you, Jason.
Right, guys, just going to take off myself off mute first and then chuck on my PowerPoint. There's always one, isn't there? Here we go. I'll get there. Can everyone see my slides okay now? Okay. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to give a brief presentation today. And I hope that over the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, I'll share some data around why I think for all of us who are interested in keen to support better physical and mental health, we really should be thinking about our diet quality as one of our top priorities, both individually, but also I think as institutions and as a society. I want to then go on to briefly define what I mean by food environment. You know, this is something that perhaps not everyone here would have heard of, and what are some of the key perimeters that define so sort of food environment that we find ourselves in. And then from there, I'll share some examples around the kinds of policies and programs that have been put in place, especially in the university sector, that's been designed to try and improve our food environment, and the kind of evidence that suggests, you know, sort of how they're impactful to improving our health, health outcomes. And then I will then pass on to Justin, who will talk about some of the actions that UNSW is now taking in this space, which I think is fantastic and really incredibly important for us as an institution. So Jazzmin spent a bit of time just now talking about the link between diet and mental health, and I also just want to cover a little bit around the link between diet and our physical health, because as all of you here know, physical and mental health are intricately linked as well, right? So, and I'll do this just sort of by three numbers that I hope you'll remember, and I've gone with the fives or multiples of five. So 5% of adults in Australia, including young people, obviously, consume the recommended amount of fruit and vegetables per day. So that's 1 in 20 people. So that's for me really kind of captures that essence of how far we are as a society, not just on an individual level, but as a society from where we should be in terms of consuming this sort of dietary pattern that are known to be good for our health, right? And there are so many other stats like that. You can also look at the really, you know, junk food intake, right? So the amount of energy that comes from discretionary junk food intake, how many people consume sugary drinks on a daily basis. And at a global level, the picture is pretty similar, and this means that at a global level, about 1 in 5 premature death, right? So it's a huge number. About 11 million deaths, premature deaths globally per year, is attributable to what we call suboptimal diet. So eating not enough of the good and too much of the bad. So it's a massive amount of the disease burden, and I think Jazzmin touched on it a little bit before. We're not just talking about people dying, having a heart attack, having a stroke, having mental health issues. These are also huge economic problems, right? So we're literally talking about trillions of dollars of lost productivity, of direct healthcare costs. And in many ways, it's bankrupting our societies like all around the world, you know, like we're spending so much money just paying for caring for people once they become sick, from something that is very much preventable, right? If we could just work on our diet upstream. And then finally, I just want to in particular sort of highlight that out of that 11 million premature death that's attributable to diet, a huge part of it is cardiovascular death, so heart attacks and strokes predominantly, right? And so these are really, really important diseases. And there is now also very clear evidence that when people experience a heart attack and a stroke, it absolutely puts you at a higher risk of depression. And those who have had a heart attack and stroke and have depression, for example, are then at a worse prognosis, if you like. So they're more likely then to subsequently die or have another heart attack or have another stroke. So there's really that sort of circular link, which I think is really important to think about as well, that link between physical and mental health. And just again highlights why diet really needs to be at the heart of what we think about when we think about solutions to reducing the burden of these diseases. The next point really important I want to make, and this is starting to link into the idea of sort of why food environment is important, is how do we get here, and I think as a society, again, and especially among adults, we're sort of conditioned to think that this is all just about free will, right? It's as well, we have education, we have knowledge, and therefore you should have the free will to sort of make these enlightened choices around what you should eat. And I would actually like to make the counterpoint that it's not that simple. And very oftentimes right now, the environment is very much stacked against our good intentions. And I'll give a few examples around this. Some of you may have heard of the term bliss points. So the food industry, especially the packaged processed food industry, spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year into research and development, and they try and find that perfect combination of how much saturated fat, how much salt, and how much added sugar to put into specific products, so that when you eat those foods, it activates certain brain pathways in order to hook you, basically, to put it very simply. And they find that certain combinations of those nutrients basically hooks you onto those foods. And if you think about it in that context, perhaps free will has a little bit less of a it's a little, in some ways, almost like tobacco, and a little bit like drugs, that it really activates certain neural pathways. That means that then you're a little bit defenseless, even if you want to make good decisions. Another really good example, prominent example, is around junk food advertising, right? So, Jazzmin mentioned before around when you're feeling stressed, sometimes we want to eat junk food. And I will make the argument that it isn't so much that perhaps there isn't a biological element there, but I also would argue that there is a huge advertising element there. Many of you on your social media, Facebook feeds, would often, for example, see, oh, have you had a tough day? Here, have a Kit Kat, right? It's again very much designed to leverage those stressful points when we're feeling vulnerable already, to try and push us into purchasing the foods that aren't necessarily good. Well, in fact, we know they're not good for our mental and physical health. And I highlight this as an example of a paper on the bottom left here. I can really recommend people to look at. It was a publication by Australian colleagues at Deakin just recently, looking at the sort of practices that social marketing practices on Facebook that are pushed into people's faces. And in particular, they noticed that amongst young men between 20 to 29 years old, there's really sort of very clear junk food targeting, towards that sort of segment of the population. So I mention all this because I think hopefully it sort of shows that when we think about how can we improve our diet, not at the individual level, but perhaps at an institutional or societal level, these are system problems and we need system solutions. So we need policies and practices that reshape that food environment so that it tilts our intention back towards towards healthier foods, healthier whole foods, right? And I've listed some of these evidence-based food policies that are now really starting to get looked at by governments and by institutions all around the world. And in particular today, obviously, I'll talk a little bit now around sort of what are some of the food environment policies that universities can think about. So now I'll just quickly define what I mean by key dimensions of the food environment. So what are the factors that are important? And, these are really quite intuitive, right? So the first one is product. So what is available? If across all of our university, catering and retail stores, you can only ever find junk foods, well, what do you think you're going to buy, right? So pretty self-explanatory. And place, in some ways, it's another sort of related concept. So when you walk into a store, how are the products placed? So we know that in retail research, there are what are sort of called golden real estate areas. So near checkouts, at the entrance to a store, those are where the attention of the customers are most immediately drawn to. So what sort of foods you choose to place at those kinds of locations will have an influence on what consumers might buy. Price, again, very self-explanatory, that relative price between the more healthy versus less healthy options. And the promotion, again, a bit of a no-brainer. So what do retailers choose to highlight to consumers, right? They're using different marketing strategies. And so these are the sort of key food environment perimeters that policies can start to reshape a little bit so that shifts people's intention towards healthier products. We have previously done, and this was published in 2023, a paper where we worked with the university retailers actually to sort of start to quantify against some of these food environment criteria, criteria, sort of how our UNSW is currently performing. And we did manage to find quite a few areas that we could think about improving. So, for example, I just listed a few of these items here on the very top line there. So right now, if you look across all of our, well, this is in, sorry, data is a little older, so 2022. Paper was published in 23. If you look across the 27 fixed food outlets in UNSW, for example, the availability of what we call everyday foods. So these are foods that, as the term suggests, are the core foods that you should be having more of, made up about half, right, of all the products that were available for sale. So pretty good, but is there room for improvement? Yes, I think, if we can start to shift the availability of healthier foods towards maybe say 60, 70%, perhaps that could have a greater impact on what people are choosing to purchase. I won't go through all the rest of the details there, but I'm very happy to share the paper for anyone who wants to read it in detail. I will now move into some examples of the types of interventions that food environment interventions that universities have tried around the world, and the sort of impact they've had. And I love this particular example from the University of California, Berkeley. One, because they are one of the top universities in the world. So I think they, in the most recent Times Higher Education ranking, they're in the top 10, 9th. And so really shows that there are a lot of these top tier, higher education institutions who understands the need to tackle food environment as an important issue. And what they did is that they just, over a period of, I think, a couple of years, they told the retailers who operate on campus to say, look, as a higher education institution wants to lead by example, we need to stop selling sugary drinks because these products are essentially, again, from my perspective, they're like tobacco. You don't need them. They're horrible for your health, and they don't contain any nutrients that are good for your health, and they're just loaded full of sugar. So the university said that we want to lead by example. We're going to stop selling these products. You need to work with us and then stop selling these. And they managed to successfully do that. They then did a sample of people who work on campus, and they followed them up for 10 months once this practice was put in place. And what they found is that not only was the practice highly effective, so the daily sugary drinks intake amongst these about 250 people that they followed up reduced by about 50%, right? So a whopping 50% over there once the ban went into place. And then also they were able to see that the waist circumference, so this is a really important measure of your metabolic health, so that visceral fat, the fat around the middle part of our body, decreased by about 2 centimeters. So you can see that these kinds of policies have very important effects both on the dietary practice, but also potentially metabolic health as well. I just also want to highlight this systematic review that our team published, again, as part of our effort working with the university to sort of highlight what are, again, some of the policies that's been implemented at the university setting around the world. And what we found is that there's certainly been a pickup in these kinds of interventions that's being implemented. Most of these papers that looks at these kinds of programs have been published since 2015, so really in the last 10 years. There were 79 separate interventions that has been tested around the world in university, mostly universities around the world, and 66% of them were shown to be successful in improving people's dietary choices, right? So in terms of improving, for example, intake of fruits and vegetables, decreasing intake of junk foods. There's a really wide range of strategies were used. Most frequently it was around product promotion, so reducing the promotion of junk foods on university campuses. And one other really important point to highlight is that amongst the small subset of studies, about 12 of them, they actually looked at business outcomes. So when they said, okay, one concern is that if you were to implement these kinds of policies, what if people stop buying foods on campus? They might really hurt the bottom lines of the retailers. And out of the 12 studies that evaluated this important outcome, 11 of them found either increased or no change in business-related outcomes. So the overall revenue either stayed neutral or even went up. Only one study found that it reduced once the policy went in. So I think that's also really important, right? Because it shows that these practices could be put in and it could well be revenue neutral or even be good for retailers on campus. So overall, I think there's really encouraging evidence to support that these kinds of food environment interventions in universities can help to improve diet quality. Just a very quick reminder why this matters. Again, there is early, but I think promising evidence also that diet quality among students, for example, at universities are associated with better mental health and academic performance. So things that are obviously really, really important from a health perspective. I will stress that these are fairly early evidence. Most of them are observational. So looking at the cross-sectional association between people's students' diet quality and their grades and also their mental health. We need more experimental research, but certainly, again, the evidence is promising. So I just want to conclude by saying that I think that, hopefully I've given you a sense of we really are facing a health crisis driven by poor quality diets in Australia, but also globally. We need impactful nutrition policies to reset our food environment, to help us to make those, improved dietary habits. We really need to practice what we preach, right? UNSW is a leader in education and health, and also many, many universities are the same. I like to remind everyone that our university motto is knowledge by heart, hand, and mind. And I think I've hopefully given you some data that shows that when it comes to nutrition, nourishing nutrition is pretty important for the heart and the mind in terms of our mission of what the university is trying to achieve. It's also really incredibly important to point out that Australian universities, for example, employ 130,000 staff, have about 1.5 million students that go to these universities. So we are a very important part of society where students and staff spend a significant part of our time every day, to attend these institutions. So even small changes in these settings can translate to really large impacts. So we can play a really important role in helping society and improving our diet. And now, just to sort of set up, hopefully, to pass on to Justin, UNSW does have a good food charter, and then this is something that many of us have worked together with the university, retailers, and real estate management and others over the last few years to try and say, well, first thing that we should try and do is develop a bit of a plan, right? So we developed this good food charter that lays out the sort of principles of to guide the kind of policy development that we want to see from UNSW, and they should be oriented around making sure healthy foods are available, sustainable foods are available, there's greater variety, they should be affordable, and there should be information about the kind of foods that we're eating available to support students and staff to make better choices, right? And this is really backed by a survey that was done in 2021 as well. They showed that students and staff want to see this happen. Health, sustainability, pricing, consistent came out as the top factors of importance for students and staff when it comes to university food environment. And this was actually endorsed by the management board, so the senior management at the university. And now I'll pass it to Justin to sort of hear from him around what efforts have been put in to make this a reality. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jason. So Justin, I actually have a couple of questions for you that I'm hoping you'll be able to answer. So, I'm aware, given that we've had the Good Food Charter and that UNSW has recently made a lot more changes in your food environment, are you able to provide us with a bit of an overview of some of those changes and how they support the UNSW community to access that more diverse, nutritious and affordable food options?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Belinda. I would start by saying we're at the start of probably a pretty long journey. And there's certain components of the Good Food Charter and what we want to do as part of our retail strategy that may take longer than others. But I think over the past 12 to 18 months, we've had some really big wins and made some big improvements. And I'll probably start with what would be most noticeable on campus, which is our retail mix and how we approach our retail leasing to make sure that we've got the right retail partners on campus. For those that haven't seen them, we've got 3 new retailers on campus over the course of this year, and every single one of those retailers has been introduced with a specific purpose in mind in terms of meeting the goals for our UNSW strategy, our retail strategy, and all the kind of associated requirements for the university. And to use those 3 retailers as an example, 2 of them are specifically targeting healthy, nutritious meal options on campus, where you can find things like poke bowls, more foods that provide you with some of the things that Jazzmin and Jason highlighted. We've got a fresh bakery, salad bowls, and things like that being offered. And then the 3rd retailer is targeted around a different component of our strategy, which is more around the affordability piece. So whilst it may not be directly clear when we see these retailers open, there is very, very targeted goals that we're trying to meet with every single new opening. So that's probably the first component to it. In our actually in our actual leasing though, and our decision making around retail, there's been a lot of work that's been done by the whole team in estate management, ensuring that, you know, we've identified the goals that we need to meet through retail, and that we're then ensuring that retailers need to abide by them through lease clauses, through a clear understanding of what our strategy is prior to introducing those retailers, and consistent conversations once they're on campus. So things like our hero meal deals, every single retailer on campus is expected to provide at least one satiating lunch option under a $12.50 price point, and one more snack-based option under a $7.50 price point. Now, that requires management, ongoing management, obviously, but you know, the core and the structure to ensure that we are managing that is there, and we'll continue to work on that to make sure that it's the offering that the campus deserves. Probably less noticeable, but to me just as important, is around communication. It was really clear through a lot of the research and the surveys and the workshops that we did as part of our retail strategy, was that sometimes people just aren't aware of the options that we have on campus. And we potentially have a lot of really suitable options already in our mix that just either are too far from people or not as well communicated as it needs to be. And so we've done a lot of work around our website, and we've had some fantastic support from a variety of teams in getting a new website up to date. We're currently working on how we can better offer fresh made on campus catering offerings and things like that. And how we can work marketing in to make sure that all of our students and staff on campus are fully aware of what the offering is. And then if we get feedback on that, perfect, we'll look to address that as well, but at least there's some clarity on what we actually have. And what I'd probably finish on would be an equally important offering that probably touches on a component of the conversation that the retail businesses can't really touch, which is more of that food insecurity piece, is the food hub, which is something we work on frequently with ARC, and they do a fantastic job in that initiative. And we want to ensure that whatever we can do to support the growth of that initiative and provide that to as many students and staff as possible, we're going to help support.
Great, thanks Justin for that outline. Obviously, I understand there are sort of plans moving forward as well. Are there any additional supports or that you're looking at to encourage students to really access that affordable food and nutrition on campus?
Yes, I don't know how much I can necessarily share around, but I can guarantee you that the focus for us is, when we went through this process, we felt it was really important, which is probably quite obvious to everyone, but it's really important to understand what is needed from our retail food and beverage operators to meet the needs of the campus, and that's students, staff, any visitors to campus. What does it need to deliver? And fortunately for us, which made our job slightly easier, was the feedback was pretty consistent. There were probably three main points of feedback that were provided, and one of those was around affordability and value. I would say that's a little bit more complicated, and I talk a lot about this, but I think there's a difference between food insecurity and affordability and ensuring we've got those options available, and also value for money. And I think a lot of that feedback is sometimes bucketed together, but there is a component of ensuring that our retail operators are providing a service that people consider good value for money, and that's a whole different conversation, something we're definitely addressing, and we've already had some great success in that area. The second piece of feedback was probably around variety, but not in terms of the amount of different types of cuisine, but more around dietary, allergen and cultural requirements, which is obviously super important. And again, I would go back to the communication piece. I think we already do have a lot of that available on campus. It's just about better communicating it out to the wider population. And then the final piece was around access, which is a little bit challenging. We've got a very big campus, and we often only have one operator doing a single cuisine or doing a specific offering. And so how do we look at ensuring that those offers are more accessible, for everyone across campus, and not for those that are just located, within a 5-minute walk. So there's obviously a plan in place to address that too.
Great, thank you. Next question is actually for Jason and probably Jazzmin as well. So, in an environment where students really are under a lot of stress, they're really juggling financial strain, study pressure, is it really that bad that they reach for, some processed food now and again? And what can make it easier to really encourage them to eat that nutritious food rather than that, go in that sort of cycle that we do and go, oh, I really want that chocolate bar or that, fizzy drink. So I'll give it to both of you to answer that question.
I'll start with a brief. I think something that we want to do is not to demonize those processed food because they are part of our dietary pattern. So it's okay to have them occasionally. So don't feel bad at all if you did end up consuming some, because I do eat them as well. But I think for, like I said, we don't want to go back to the stress and food craving kind of cycle. So I think it's important for us to kind of plan ahead. And if budget is and talking about affordability and then sustainability, it's like consuming more like plant-based food and also like cook in bulk, buy food in season, and then like choose like frozen or any canned fruit or vegetables when they are out there. I think just trying to think about some of the practical ways of trying to plan and meals and snacks in advance, that would really, really help. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with Jazzmin, and I think I've already made my case clear. I'm a systems and policies guy. I don't think that focusing on what individual needs at any point in time is very productive. I think we need to tilt the playing field by this kinds of wonderful efforts that Justin has just mentioned to make sure that those healthy options are available and easily within reach and at a cost that people can afford. And I think those are the most important things we can do. I'd love to see the university leadership play a more active role in this as well, provide our estate management and other teams with more funding support to kind of be able to communicate these important initiatives to the student and staff body to say, hey, I think that leadership piece is really, really important because it shows that this is coming from folks who are the leaders of the institution. I think that will sort of set the tone and help folks understand that this is really important for our university community as well. But yeah, let's not stigmatize anyone for what decisions they make on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Jason. Justin, my question from the comment box. So what kind of response has there been from the current retailers and in that offering of more healthy, affordable options? And some of those options tend to be a little more expensive. So just sort of, how have the retailers responded to that request for those more healthy options to be available? And what strategies have you used to encourage them as well?
In short, really positive. I think we're very lucky. I've been part of many different retail environments, and we're very lucky to have very strong relationships with our existing retail partners and the new ones as well. We've got very open dialogue, and when we've got feedback coming directly from the campus population, it's very easy to pass that on, and there's a level of comfort there in having those conversations. How quickly we kind of see any changes will obviously vary from retailer to retailer. How much change we see will vary from retailer to retailer. But I think it helps a lot being able to go to both existing and new retail partners and being able to share a clear vision and clear expectations on what we want delivered on campus, and then when we get buy-in at the very start of that conversation, we can then go back and retrospectively manage it to ensure that we're staying on those guide rails and we're keeping our standards high. It's something we've talked about a lot with our retail partners, making sure that they're really, really clear on what we want out of them, and we're always very, very quick to pass on any feedback we get. Specifically around, nutrition, but also general standards as well. And we put a lot of practices in place to make sure that that's consistent.
Great. You've mentioned a few times that feedback loop. How would, say, a student or a staff provide feedback to you?
Mostly through our help desk, but also we on a more regimented basis. And the uni does this not just for retail, but obviously across the whole campus, but surveys are a really great way for us to get real-time and detailed feedback. We have workshop sessions, and we'll have those continuing, so that we can get kind of more collaborative conversation ongoing, and we have regular meetings with key stakeholders as well to get those feedback and see how we're going. But one of the things we're also trying to do is make sure that there are forums that make it really, really easy for students and staff to provide feedback on retail, and almost mimic how you would expect life to work outside of campus. And one of those things would be around having basics like Google reviews and things like that. So you would expect that all of our retails have that avenue as well to provide feedback, and those that do, which is the majority, we keep on top of that feedback as well, so that we can have a really clear understanding of what's being kind of experienced.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Another question that was asked previously was, how can I access affordable fresh produce on campus? And I think you've alluded to that a little bit, but I was hoping you could expand on that a bit more, Justin.
Yeah, Food Hub would be probably a really great place for that. Produce is a challenging one, because I think for a very long time we have very much focused on that ready to eat meal type offering, which is the bulk of our food and beverage. We obviously have IGA down at University Terraces that provides fresh produce as well. The affordability piece can be argued, but then I would also argue, where in general life can you get affordable produce nowadays? So it is challenging. There is obviously a significant rise in the cost of product, and we see that as consumers when we go for our food shops and things like that. The retailers experience the exact same thing. So for them to run businesses, there is a pinch point there where, we want to provide the cheapest possible food options and produce options for everyone on campus, but at the same time they still need to be able to survive. And so it's finding that right balance, and that extends to finding the right mix and all these other things. But going back to the produce piece, yeah, currently it's definitely something that's being discussed. But currently, yeah, the IGA for kind of a more retail-based produce, and Food Hub also does a range of produce as well through their offering.
And we've also shared in here the Thoughtful Foods as well, that co-op as well, that offers bulk foods and produce as well. So absolutely, that is available. Yeah. And I think they have big boxes once a week or something like that.
They do, actually, yes. Very good reminder. Thoughtful Foods do a lot of great, more packaged offerings as well, which are fantastic.
Yeah. So I've spoken a little bit today about the Good Food Trail that we're running this week, and I think that's a really great example of a promotional strategy that's being run throughout the week. Justin, do you want to just sort of speak to that really briefly, and we can show you a slide of some of the delicious food that's on offer?
Yeah, sure. So I really love this initiative, but we've gone out to a range of our retail partners and just asked, what they could potentially provide to promote some of their healthy meal offerings, and what kind of aligns with the type of offering that we really want to encourage people consuming on campus. And we want to we want to try as much as we can to take the affordability side of it out of it, because I think the point was raised that nutritious food tends to be a little bit more expensive. Yes, because it's freshly made. Nutritious produce is generally a little bit more expensive. You'll find there's patterns between cheaper food being a little bit more carb heavy and things like that. So we've gone to our retail partners, and they've happily agreed and gotten on board to offer some of these healthier options for a really valued price point at between $10 and $12. And so we've got things like full-size poke bowls with salmon from Sushizoku and the Quad. Taste Spaghetti doing a $12 full-size bowl. Yalla Eat. So it's across the whole campus. I think there's 6 or 7 retailers participating, all with $10 to $12 full meal offerings. That can hopefully encourage everyone on campus to give these nutritional offerings a go, and kind of participate in this kind of healthy eating, which the retailers doing this just completely off their own back. So just a good indicator that they're right on board with what the university values are, and they want to support.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see this, and I'll certainly be supporting those vendors this week, and looking forward to eating some of that food. So I encourage everyone else to do the same. We're coming to the end, but if there's any questions that anyone is pressing questions you'd really like answered, please pop them in. But before I wrap up, I just want to say, throw it out to each of you as well. Just with, is there any last comments you want to leave around sort of the food environment, how to, I guess, continually evolve that food environment at UNSW and I guess lead that great work that Justin has been doing and the whole of estate management has been doing and really shaping that environment. So if there is anything any of you would like to share as a passing final message, I invite you to share that.
Jazzmin, Justin? The double J's. Yeah, it's just a very quick comment. I think to sort of Justin's point, I think I would encourage everyone here, students or staff who are on the call, be an agent of change, like it's give Justin and the team the feedback that they clearly want to hear about and provide to the retailers, because you are the demand, driving the demand side of what is going to occur on campus. So the more of that voice you give to support Justin and the team, the more the retailers will see, oh wow, this really is the popular and in demand thing to do. But don't stop there, right? Like if you run into the vice chancellor at the next social event and like anyone, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm also not, like if you really care about this and be an agent of change. Right? You're doing this not just for yourselves, but also for the greater university community. We've shown the data. The data is the data. They speak to the burden of what we're facing when it comes to diet-related diseases, and we need system change, and that will only come when all of us can advocate for those kinds of changes as well. So yeah, so look for opportunities to advocate for these changes as well. So thanks.
Yeah, so adding to what Jason said, I think now hopefully you have good understanding of why we need to eat healthy. So trying to choose more healthy options now that's all available on campus to support the food outlets. Yeah, and just taking small steps for a longer term impact.
Fabulous. Justin?
Sorry, I'll just quickly add just the point about balance. Like, I don't want anyone to walk away from this with the idea that we have a strategy to just strip out anything that is not healthy, nutritious, and perfect. We absolutely want everyone on campus to feel like they've got choice, and there's a lot of different choices that can be made around your food options. So yes, the drive is towards ensuring that we've got nutritious options available anywhere on campus, but we also aim to maintain that variety as well, because I think that's just as important.
Absolutely, and I think if anyone is interested and feels like diving deep into the Good Food Charter, it is available for you to have a look at, and it really does outline that it isn't all just whole foods and things. It is that variety, as Justin spoke to as well. So I'd like to really give my thanks to all three of our speakers. Thank you for your insights, your wisdom, and your knowledge. And before you all go, and thank you everyone for joining us again today. I hope you got something from this as well. But before you do go, I really invite you to scan the QR code and just provide a little bit of feedback about the webinar today. Yeah, as we all know in the academic and the university world, that feedback really is important in helping us to sort of quality improve and to shape events moving forward. So I really appreciate you just taking a few minutes to do that. Thank you so much for being with us and for joining us today.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Belinda and team for hosting us. A really important event. Thank you.